flower was offered to me, such a flower as May never bore. I said I'm a pretty rose tree, and I passed the sweet flower o'er. I passed the sweet flower o'er.
I remember sitting on a train with Victor coming to Bella one summer, I think it must have been 2005, and he'd already done one Blake album, and it was, I just said, why don't we base a play on Blake around your songs? So that was kind of like the initial spark of it, and then we sent out an email to the collective saying, who's interested in a Blake production?
My only delight.
Actually, live music has always been a feature of TED Productions, just as original writing has always been. And you know, it goes back to the beginning of Theatre of Eternal Values, when Sri Mataji guided the formation of the theatre company, saying that there were many talents in Sahaja Yoga, many talented yogis, and that they should be contacted. And so the idea was very much to involve everybody we could. You know, anybody who wanted to be involved, who had something to offer, had a talent, we suddenly found space for, in order to reflect this, how should we say, if you like, the Sahasrara, the many dimensions of this unitary being, somehow representing the union of diversity and you know, we are not one, we are many. We are many who are one, you know. And I think we were honouring very much, trying to honour Sri Mataji's vision of having that, representing collectivity, you know, in its multifaceted forms and its variety.
Oh, Holy Virgin, clad in purest white, unlock heaven's golden gates and issue forth.
And then TED started, so I went straight to Belgium, and 7 different countries involved, at least 4 different acting styles. There was Nicolette and various people who'd studied in Belgium, and then there was Germany, Reinhardt, and Austria, and England. And as an apprentice, I called myself an apprentice at the beginning. I was terrified, didn't feel worthy, full of insecurities and stuff, but had an amazing amount of support and chance to really get a very rounded training, I think.
I remember it must have been 2 years before we've been in England that a big group met here in Vienna to rehearse. And it was in the cellar I'm sitting now. This is a cellar of a normal house with, I don't know, well, it's not small, but there were like 10, 12 people. I can't remember really how many there were. And we rehearsed the chimney sweepers dance for them.
And in 2007 was the 250th anniversary of the birth of William Blake. William Blake is a very important person in Sahaja Yoga. He's the incarnation of Bhairava. And we felt that anniversary had to be honored, it had to be marked. We had to manifest that quality of William Blake in the world, and what better way to do it through the multimedia possibilities of theatre.
We really started by looking at his painting and trying to bring forward his movement, whatever was coming out from his painting, to bring that into our body and then into a movement in itself that created the scene. And we actually really had fun at the beginning in bringing this aspect out.
Go on from the beginning. Any sentence. Cuckoo. Go back.
That's good, Purna. We developed it from improvisation and then went into choreographing it.
Okay, Martin, wait.
Yeah. Not with stretched legs. Mimi. No, not bend feet.
For the Blake piece, it was sort of a collective, democratic search for finding the right form and the right words and the right costumes, and it was a searching process.
More than you can. This is very good. And he passes you. You give money. You give also money, but it's not enough. And that's good. Have about a hand. Yeah. And you are insane.
They're very archetypical, like it really draws an archetype when you see the movement of certain images. So through that, it brings a lot of story with it. And the idea to bring back that movement on stage in a tableau vivant, for example, and from there then to develop the scene came quite natural, I think.
Tests children with the permission of God. Satan kills Job's sons and daughters while drinking at the house of the elder brother.
Became almost one with the energy of Blake, and also working with those movements. I'm an actor, and I come from a background of more method acting, so not so much looking for the action and then to find the emotion, but more looking inside from the emotion and then finding the character. And what I found very interesting in the process of working together with Tev and our collective of artists, everybody with a different background, that we really looked at different energies and discovering each other's energies and becoming really one with that.
I remember loving all the movement, but also all the different people, the input of the three directors which we had. I thought that was really wonderful. I really loved that kind of things, because you can feel everybody, and you could just feel how magically things were becoming one. It was just, they were all different, all had different things to say, all had different things to do, and somehow it was all very clear.
It was really that it was working layers, a layer after layer after layer, building up, taking the good, forgetting the rest, and then adding something else. So there were lots of things coming up, as Nicolette was saying. Yes, first to work in three on somehow a play, whatever, it wasn't easy at all. So we used to call in help the divine director. I remember always when there was mess, when we were not okay, Tim would say something, and then Vanessa would say something else, and I would say something else, and then say, okay, divine director, please, you do it. And then by the end, we had the fourth petal that was Eric. And then sort out all the mess that we eventually did before.
Warring Satan never rests long. Bound in the bonds of spiritual hate, Satan torments Job with terrible nightmares, and his spectrous chaos before his face appeared, an unformed memory. Then spoke the spectrous chaos, darkening cold, from the back and the loins where dwell the spectrous dead.
I am God, O sons of men. I am your rational power. Where is Jesus, that friend of sinners, that rebel against my laws, who teaches belief to the nations and an unknown eternal life? Come hither into the desert and turn these souls to bread. Vain, foolish man, wilt thou believe without experiment? Build a world of fantasy upon my great abyss.
And there were so many different levels, I think, with this production. And it was working on a physical level, So you could understand it physically. I mean, for example, Zelje was using mime also alongside what he was doing text-wise. So, I mean, they were getting actually lots of different layers of meaning in lots of different ways.
I insisted on his leaving, but he refused. I still persisted in desiring his departure. He then threatened to knock out my eyes, with many abominable imprecations and with some contempt for my person.
And the music as well, which is another aspect we haven't talked that much about. So there's a lot of emotional meaning and vibrational meaning conveyed also through the music. The incidental music that Andreas did, and also the songs.
Behold, how in a dream God appears from out of the whirlwind and reveals to Job the created heavens.
I was invited, I don't know exactly by who anymore, to delve into the prophetic parts of the book, the layers, the screens. There are so many levels that in the show, and then there's the prophetic level, and those were not songs. Those were spheres, unheard and unseen spheres. So I just grabbed all my weaponry, my musical weaponry, and brought it to Cabela. And I have been playing around before with themes and sounds and so forth. And but I must say that in the process of making, that really went very fast, because Victor says, like, the words are easily accessible, but it is also the other way around. So the words, they also, and these spheres, they also are really easy to work with.
The imagination is not a state. It is human existence itself. Behold, there is a place where contraries are equally true. From this sweet place, maternal love. Awake, O lovely Jerusalem. Give forth thy pity and thy love. Fear not, for I am with thee always.
But it really came very easy and fast, and it was sometimes it was always like, just put your fingers down, it's always right. There were so many levels. There was the art in the scenery and the projection. So not only in music but also in the imagery, there were different realities. And so as in a great Shakespeare writing, there were all kinds of levels. So for the viewers, there was so much happening.
Goh, we hebben een decor gemaakt en dat was, ik herinner mij vooral het kader. We hadden zo gelijk een frame gemaakt, en waarin dat jullie speelden. Want van decor was er in feite niet zodanig veel. Het was enkel het frame dat we gemaakt hadden.
Nou, William Blake was die...
Het
boek van Job was dat, het boek Job.
And so it was that Job rose early each morning and in the manner of his religion made offerings to God.
Goh, ja, maar ja, de achtergrond ook nog, uw hoofd. Die achtergrond hebben wij gemaakt. Want dat was een enorm grote doek. He. We moesten op de grond eerst een plastic en dan die doek. Maar zeg maar groot. Ik denk de breedte was zeker 7 meter.
Ja. Zoiets, ja.
7 meter op...
Die backdrop, ja.
Ja, het was een gigantisch backdrop.
Ja,
dat weet ik.
Met de zon.
We didn't mention the percussionist, who was also kind of working on his own, and somehow when it came together, it was just like it was like all together.
In the fierce flames, the limbs of mystery lay consuming with howling and deep despair. Rattling go up the flames around the synagogue of Satan. Loud the serpent orb raged through its 27 folds. The tree of mystery went up in folding flames. Blood issued out in rushing volumes, pouring in whirlpools fierce from out the floodgates of the sky. The books of Urizen unroll with dreadful noise. The folding serpent of orb began to consume with fierce raging horror. Its fierce flames issued on all sides, gathering strength in animating volumes, roaming.
We didn't know if we were going to be able to do the play because we needed support to be able to put a deposit down for the theatre, which was around, if I'm not much mistaken, around £6,000. And there was a meeting called to decide on it. And it was, from informal sort of soundings out, there wasn't unanimity on giving support for the production, to support the production. And I'd actually offered to go over and actually present the case for doing it, and Jeff had said to me, no, don't worry, we can handle it. I know what it's all about. I'll be able to represent it.
When we got word from Victor about the proposal to stage a William Blake play to mark Blake's 250th birth anniversary, it sounded like a big gulp, and the Adam's apples went up and down because it sounded like a big endeavour. But it wasn't just the idea to stage a play, it was an idea to stage the play in the West End of London. And of course, that meant money, and it meant bringing a lot of people on board to use collective attention, collective energy, collective funds to support such an endeavour.
I mean, of course, in UCASI, it had to be discussed, because when you're asking for collective support, collective funding, that has to be always looked at and worked out, whether everything's in place and whether people will be happy with the donations being offered, And
I remember I stood at one, I can't remember, one weekend or one day, and just gave a short mention about the play to a group of the collective in the National Centre, and it was a very natural but very powerful moment, where you could feel the attention from the people in the room, from those in the room who really understood the significance of William Blake to us, to the country, and to Shamatage, which of course, was absolutely a given.
We were able to very quickly, the whole UK Council, embrace this proposal, this idea, and get behind it and try and backstop any of the financial requirements, both in the short term and the long term. And we felt that here in the land of Albion, again named by Blake, that it would be our duty to support this great marking of the advent of Blake's 250th anniversary of his birth.
Practical things like money, they are important, but at the same time, we're doing it for a much higher purpose. And, we're not expecting to make any money from this. We're expecting to share a message with the universe.
And so we were off on holiday in Scotland, and it was the day that the council was supposed to meet and decide whether to actually support it. And I was sitting on a platform in Berwick-on-Tweed, on the station platform, and it was the early afternoon, and suddenly my attention went inside. I had to close my eyes, and there was this uplifting sense of peace and the presence of divinity. And in my mind's eye suddenly appeared towards the left side the profile, very large profile of Lord Shiva, with a blue countenance, and he just smiled very slightly, very slightly. There was just a sense of a smile, and I knew that he was pleased.
It's finished. Finally. Kate? Kate, what is there to eat? Damn the money.
Don't worry, Mr. Blake. I'm sure Mr. Butts will give us some more of his commissions.
Oh, yes. Our good friend, Mr. Butts.
Maybe we're going to do the play, in England.
So it's really, why William Blake? Because he is an incarnation, the Sri Bhairava, which basically governs the arts of the universal arts. He is, at the forefront of what you're achieving, theatre of eternal values. He is really the one you gotta sort of look to, because he is that the one that gives you that inspiration. It comes from that source.
It was one of those things which is impossible, for a bunch of rank amateurs, as we were, to even consider putting on a play in the West End of London, at short notice, with no funding. It couldn't be done. So, every single day that something happened that propelled it forward was a miracle. And we took it as that, so you couldn't help but be excited and enthralled and amazed at how this thing unfolded.
God is man and exists in us, and we in him. In your own bosom you bear your heaven and earth, and all you behold.
But again, I think once we started with it, it was a case of the excitement carried us through. It was remarkable how the possibility of it took shape. And once the theatre was booked, the deposit was paid, there was no looking back. And all there was sheer excitement, stroke panic, and we weren't panicked buying petrol or toilet rolls. We were just generally panicked by the enormity of what lay before us. But that panic, that stress, we turned to good energy and to inspire each other and stay inspired ourselves, really. All looking forward to the moment when, of course, the TEV theatre actors themselves would come and inspire us all with the production, with the play.
It appears without. It is within. In your imagination. Forever. From eternity to eternity.
And in a way, Blake, his narrative about the arts is the arts that guide and lead society, not science, not reason, not economics. It's the arts that really, propel society forward and inspire society. And here we were doing all we could to support the works of Blake coming to life 250 years after his birth in the heart of the universe, in the heart of London, and to see what effect that might have.
My involvement with the play was the fact that I was coordinating Pujan events at that time. And of course we had to, from Pujan events, it had to go to UKASI, the Council of UK. So that's how we got first involved in the play, but that's how I first got involved in the play. And during the course of that, then I got given a job for the lighting, which then I asked Kim if he can be involved with the lighting, so we would do it together, and that's how I was involved from the beginning.
We definitely got the collective behind us, and I think the main way that happened was because key people in the collective were enormously interested. So Lewis and his wife, Geoffrey Godfrey was in all the meetings as well. So people who had certainly more clout than we did in the collective were Pass as well, was in from the start. So these people, exactly, Nigel. So these people bought into it. And that meant that the wider collective also accepted it.
When we met for I think 7 or 8 weeks, possibly 9, every Tuesday evening. And really, we set ourselves the task of going into all aspects of how to help deliver and support the undertaking, whether it was with props or backdrops or lighting or sound or fundraising or postering or leafleting or PR, and getting in contact with outreach and radio and newspapers. And
it was an incredibly exciting time. I mean, we had where was it? We had the meetings. Whose house was that? Was that Jeffrey's? It was Jeffrey's while he was still in London, wasn't it? And it was wonderful. The atmosphere was just wonderful. You know, there'd be like 8 or 10 of us gathered around the kitchen table and all passionate about this project. It was a very, very exciting time.
We gave ourselves homework each week, so it wasn't a case of come have some food and a bit of chit chat. Everybody left with a folder full of information, and they then went away and came back and reported the next week and came back with questions and revelations and unfoldments and connections. And we kept following up with each other, and that's what was required to bring this thing to fruition, to deliver the baby by November 28th.
And I also remember a significant amount of envelope stuffing and licking of stamps and stuff to send out to schools to invite them, and that was all just part of the joy of it all, I suppose.
So I mean, I was just looking back through the notes now, and I see that the treasurer authorized or bought, the university addresses for us to contact, to mail out to. So there was definitely, we were definitely embraced.
You must have seen the Guru Puja performance in Italy. So when we actually brought the project, we said, okay, we're doing this in London for the 250th anniversary. Having seen it already in Cabela, hopefully that sort of, that sparked the interest a lot in everybody to get behind it, because it was, and just explaining to them, that we've done everything ourselves all these years. We don't have a production manager. We don't have a marketing team. We have nobody, and we needed them. We needed the support, and we got it in tenfold, 1,000-fold. It was amazing to have that support in London.
I remember one of the things we did was we staged a kind of one-day bazaar at the National Centre, where people came and ate, scones and drank tea and coffee and all sorts of things. But I think Nigel bought a lot of IT equipment and made that available for sale, because he was an IT reviewer and had all these gadgets, which were all very interesting. And so, we turned those into pound notes. And we had a fun day, and that day alone raised, I think, £5,500 towards the project. And so, again, they're members of the collective coming on, attending, supporting, to put some real pound notes behind the project.
We were really riding that wave of support, and the things we did were really nothing that we did. They were just doors that opened and events that happened to propel us to this amazing situation where we could celebrate this phenomenal personality, this phenomenal soul, in the right kind of setting. And the play itself was sublime.
But I remember somehow being asked if we could help get this, talk about this and get it off the ground. And of course, as we all had been, we had the years of the Puja play experiences that we'd all been working together on. So I do remember vaguely having a chat and then starting meetings at I think Jeffrey's house in Ealing, wasn't it? Yeah. And I also remember at that first, when I was asked, I do remember saying, look, if we're going to do this, we need to pull in someone like Eric, who we've had a lot of experience with him managing the Puja plays over the year, and if you're going to do this, you're going to need someone like that to help. Is going to bring a lot of value.
We're going to bring the lights up a little bit in the first two scenes so we can see you a bit better. You don't need to know that, but we will. We will find you. Tomorrow night is a dress rehearsal for me. It's just a dress rehearsal with people, so you get used to the people being back. We'll do another run on Thursday morning, and then we'll do an opening night. And I will keep coming, and it doesn't stop. The press will come all next week as well. So we're going to keep tweaking, keep pushing. Great. Okay, so go and get some sleep, guys. Well done. Cheers, Eric.
I'd been a professional actor and director up until that point. And I'd also been very heavily involved when I came into Sage Yoga and pamphleting, especially around in Camden and trying to bring people to meetings, and always just got to the point where I just felt like I just don't feel like, one, I'm very good at this. Two, I had just been on a TV thing, and it became a very uncomfortable situation sometimes to be on the street and potentially be, recognized in that way as the character or other. And it was just a very difficult time. And I just felt like, I don't feel like I'm contributing in the way that I could. And I literally went home after a fairly unsuccessful pamphleting experience. And I came home and I lit the candle, and I literally just bowed down to Shamaji, and I said, please, if there's something that I can do that's useful, that I can help, please let me know. And as soon as I said it, the phone rang, and you, Tim, asked me to come down and have a look at the Arthur play that you were doing for the collective. And then up until that point, I don't think I had any experience with just about any of the productions. And I was like, okay, it was very clear. I had my message of what to do. And I said, sure, I'll come down. And I remember, I said, I'll pull a chair up and I'll see what I can do. I don't know. And we just had such a great time doing that play. It all kind of worked out. I didn't even get to go, I don't think, to the final production. And then from that moment on, I started doing all the plays for the collective, and just felt totally, I thought, well, this is I asked, I was given an answer, and this is what I'm going to do. So it never fazed me. And so I was aware of the TED productions going on, and I worked on the TIE production of Baloopa's Journey with Steve, who I was working with at the time, and had a really interesting experience. Most of those people were very new, hadn't had any drama training. So it was kind of like teaching, nurturing, and directing at the same time. And it was really enjoyable. It was an enjoyable experience. And so it kind of all came together where they were looking for somebody, and we had been doing huge productions. The Italians were doing huge productions, and it was a kind of knowledge of Victor and Pointer, what Pointer was doing on stage, what I was doing on stage. And so when it came up, and I think, Mary, I think you asked me originally about it, it was kind of like, yes, that's to me, it seemed like the natural progression of where all these plays in front of Mother at the Pujas had to move to Tev for her company, to then try and achieve what she'd asked us to achieve with that.
The thing I noticed is not related, but the other thing I remember is, doing working on these productions, there were moments when you landed on something, and it's like there was a tweak or change of words or whatever it was, and you'd land on something, and suddenly you'd feel a real whoosh of vibrations, like lined up. Something had lined up, and it was amazing. You just is like the difference, wasn't it? You just a millimeter left or right, and it's suddenly something completely opened. And we had those experiences in there. It was amazing.
Ah, shall the dead live again? See how the breath divine goes forth upon the morning hills and pierces Albion's clay cold ear. Albion moves upon the rock. He opens his eyelids in pain. In pain he moves his stony members, rising in anger, the wrath of God breaking on all sides around his awful limbs. And as he sits in his pale disease, brooding on evil, he sees that the accursed things were his own affections, his own beloved.
What do I hear before the judgment? Without my emanation! Oh, thou deceitful friend, worshipping mercy and keeping thy friend in such affliction, I demand righteousness and justice!
Looking for the theatre itself, I mean, Caroline, you came a few times with me.
Yeah.
And then Tim, you and I went and we looked at...
Yeah, we tried the Shore Theatre and all kinds of theatres like that.
All sorts of places.
The art theatre we went to, I recall.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of remembered that when we saw the new players, it made sense immediately. But I can see that in my diary, we actually saw other theatres afterwards as well.
Yeah. No, we kept the options open because it's not such a well-known theatre. I mean, it's known among certain circles. It was known as a music hall theatre. So it kind of worked. And it was just down the road from where Blake lived, Fountain Court on the Strand.
Yeah,
I mean,
and it's just off the Strand.
Yeah.
So it's not...
You could almost feel that Blake...
Yeah. Right next to the embankment tube and everything,
except
on the Thames.
But there's not footfall in front of it.
No.
Unlike other theatres.
It's a little
bit.
But
you felt
away.
his presence there because he would have walked up and down that road, up and down the Strand. You know, that's where his last his last flat was, his last home
Planting
was,
Court.
where he died,
for
just
me-
along the Strand.
For
So
me, the
it was like you
clinch,
could feel him every time I walked there. I could feel his presence, and it was just incredible,
also for me, the clincher was when we walked into the theatre, and lo and behold, it had exactly the same colours that Chris had chosen for the poster. So with the floor was the same blue as the bottom half of the poster, and the walls were the same red as the top. I mean, identical. It was incredible, absolutely incredible.
William.
Yes.
The same message came across to me, one through the actual understanding of Blake, and I remember that scene in the play where Catherine tells him there's no food, or she gives him an empty plate, and and realizing that he went through this, he was so dedicated to what he was doing, even food didn't feature sometimes, and just seeing the Tevis as well as my first experience with them, and how committed they were. This desire to fulfill Shrimataji's vision was driving them so hard, and a lot of people going to so much trouble, taking time out of their lives and their jobs. And for me, I was on the edge of these creative professions, and how important is it, is it really that valuable that you should dedicate so much of your time and effort? And to see people doing that for real, it was really powerful for me.
But also very, very important and never to forget is the fact that this what Shrimataji loved. When we did every puja, she always was there, attended each play that was put on, music program, but obviously the plays were always an amazing message that came through. So, and of course, for me again, is what it's supposed to be part of the Sangha, to help them to achieve the goals which Shrimataji set out, which is theatre of eternal values, is show eternal values to the world through theatre. So I mean, it's just no brainer really, is to make as much effort as the actors do, which is giving up their time, their families and everything else and their income, to do something like that. Then the support, should be the littlest thing you can do,
Ik las van de belichting, dat duurde zo lang. En dat we eraan konden verder doen, want er was soms 2 uur dat hij gedaan had en we moesten maar dan nog beginnen. En voordien zaten wij dan maar.
Ja, het duurt lang hè?
Ja.
I will not cease from land to fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we stay there, till we have built. Okay, that was it. Yeah. Till we have built. Because I go till we. Not the moment, Bjorn.
Yeah, the mean, the making of,
the perfecting of.
Okay. Originally, we were going to do the Hubert Parry version.
Parry.
We tried it one rehearsal because we knew we had to sing Jerusalem. There was no way you could do a Blake play and not sing Jerusalem. And we sang it, and it was like, that doesn't feel right. It was just like, so I think we just said, okay. By the time we come back from the next rehearsal, we need a new Jerusalem. And I expected everyone else who was musicians to maybe try as well, but somehow it didn't happen. And it just came to me mostly walking my dog, actually. When I was out in nature, bits of the tune would come. So it wasn't like, a lot of my songs come all at once when I write, but this one was really slow. It was just like I'd get just glimpses of it here and there. And then slowly it kind of formed, and in the end it just made sense, And then when we tried it in performance, it did work because it was new.
You have yogis focusing, spending hours and hours, and And so it was one of those things. It's like doing a realization tour, doing a whatever. And back then, we weren't doing that many tours, but it was that kind of thing where you kind of like, oh wow, this is like whatever you do is going to carry so much vibrations.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We were involved, so obviously we were kind of floating, by the end. But even people who were on the periphery of it, I think were feeling some benefits, I'm sure.
So many volunteers. I mean, backstage, front of house, leafleting, postering, all these different teams. And we had a leader for each team, and then they would organize their own section kind of thing. So every time you look at the meeting notes, say, okay, who's taking this action? I mean, Caroline, your name comes up a hell of a lot of times on those meeting notes. That action, Caroline. But there were just so many teams behind it, and just helping us along the way. So that was incredible.
It's a truism in Sage Yoga that if the community feels they're, behind something, that their desire is what drives the project. It's nothing that we do. The overall desire is what really makes the difference, because that opens doors, creates miracles, and makes things happen. So we were just, well, from my point of view, I think we were just riding the crest of that desire.
I also remember, because we had a very little experience in the theatre world, but you sort of remember. You actors go off, they've got, I don't know, sometimes they got sandwiches or whatever, they're sort of fending for themselves. But here, I remember a moment when yogis were bringing food in backstage every day, and just the whole, just looking at it thinking, this is unbelievable. People coming in the middle of the day and feeding the whole cast and crew, and you just thought, this is something else. It's totally different. It's a family of people, beyond just the people performing it and producing. It was really something else. It blew me away when I saw pots being carried in.
Natural, selfish chastity, to banish pity and dear mutual forgiveness, and to become one great Satan enslaved to the most powerful selfhood.
Before it was work. It was really work, and but at the performance, with the light, with this dense attention and everything coming together, then it really lifted up.
Yeah. I mean, being in this play and playing this play, it was always a cleaning process and a process of wie heißt das, Reinhard, diese griechische, diese Reinigung?
Katharsis.
Thank you. Katharsis.
Yeah.
Was always, because always at the end when we were singing and Blake was getting, dying and becoming his spirit, and we were all always in tears.
This was a strong experience that you asked also, that the people who saw it were just gleaming. The eyes, and you looked into the eyes of these people and thought, oh my God, that's what we did. I mean, we didn't do it, I know, but we were at least the instruments for doing this. And that was quite amazing,
I think this combination of Blake's words and this music, what's going through the ether and hitting the people, the bodies, the spirits, the souls, it does something with people, as you said, Vanessa, even with people who are not like on this track of searching the spirit or the divine.
But you have ever been an angel to me, Kate. Oh, Kate, I'm a changing man. I always arose each morning and wrote down my thoughts, whether it rained, snowed, or shone. And you arose with me and sat beside me. This could be no longer. I would to God that all the Lord's people were prophets.
The yogis, they got it. They came. They sat down. They enjoyed it. They loved it. They just would come up to you with tears in their eyes, with joy on their faces, and they'd come again. And actually, we'd have to say, sorry, we've got to, because after the first week, the theatre actually invited us to stay on for another week because they were getting all these pre-bookings, people calling up and saying, we want to see the show. And these were people who'd read the reviews and the word of mouth factor had got around. And unfortunately, we'd only been able to, book it for a week.
It was seemed to be very appreciated by the collective, but also I had non-yogi audience members. I had people who I'd been to done my drama degree with. I had lots of people from London who had come who had nothing to do with, Sage Yoga and ever, and they had very, very positive feedback from them. And again, it just made me aware that, there's a lot of things that maybe they didn't get, but what they did get was I think the vibrations that hit them.
Yeah.
And the what actually people get. So it goes really beyond their ability to conceive it as a play or not. I mean, obviously they enjoyed various elements of it. I got lots of positive feedback of what we decided to do with it and the concept. But I think then what actually comes out and what flows penetrates people. And that's what hits them. They don't really know what it is. I had one girl who said, I can't describe what it is, but there's something different about it. So then I could talk to her about Sage Yoga from then. Actually, I'd always wanted to speak to her about Sage Yoga, but she'd asked, she said, what is it? What's different? Is there some, what is your group about? She actually went on to ask because she'd been so overwhelmed by what she felt during the play.
I remember the last night, just after the last performance, standing in the foyer outside, in a bit of a dazed state, having gone through an incredibly intense finale. And one of the founders of the Blake Society, who we'd been chatting to during the organisation of he'd been very supportive of us, although he was almost estranged from the Blake Society. But he came up to me in the foyer and said, that was one of the most incredible weeks I've ever experienced. And I just don't think anybody else could have done it justice like you folks did.
We have to make a commitment sometimes to actually do something that has no material value. We have to do that. And honouring Blake in the 250th anniversary, we as yogis, we have that duty. So for me, going to London was a pilgrimage to pay tribute to one of the greatest prophets of all time, who happened to be an artist.
William, Mother is waiting. Robert, wait! Wait for me!
Voices of children are heard on the green. and laughing is heard on the hill. My heart is at rest within my breast, and everything else